creating these custom characters, you're really enabling your users and your players to experience, a whole new way of interacting with your in-game characters, right? Like you craft their backstories, you give them an emotional kind of template, and you can even give them flaws. And what that does is that, you have a character that responds dynamically to user input and conversations. So it's really exciting for when you're trying to create these narrative experiences. Replayability at scale. Part of the dynamicness of interacting with these characters is that really, unless you've designed the encounter with some specific goals and actions, the interactions are going to be, different every time. And so I'll talk about a game that's really getting kind of viral attention right now later on in the presentation, called Vaudeville, and a lot of people are really enjoying that because the characters that are powered by us have the ability to give the player agency, right? Like you're able to act in either whatever role play you want as a detective, or if you're a streamer or a content creator, kind of add your own personality to the game. Which, if you're talking about traditional non-generative AI NPCs, you're usually picking from like three or four, maybe five dialogue options, and then the user or the creator is talking about that, right? But in this kind of new world of designing for these games, you're able to have the content creator actually engage in their voice, right? It's very exciting. Emotional engagement. So being able to have your user fully invested in the experience because they're building these bonds with the characters, right? Similar to what happens with, games like Mass Effect, or some of the best Bioware games. You're really able to connect with these characters because they're dynamic, right? Like you're able to engage in conversations, you're able to say what you want to say and not what the game writers have written for you. Dynamic world building. So being able to kind of populate your world with these characters, similar to the backdrop that I have here called Origins. It's a Steam game that we've released that essentially showcases aspirationally what can be done. The demo is available. It's going to be a free release. It's essentially like a tech demo. But the whole idea is that we're able to fill this world, this kind of like cyber noir world, with these characters that all have awareness of each other and have references to each other, and that really lends itself to a very kind of cohesive place to be in, right? And adaptability. So what that means is your characters don't follow a set script, right? Like you might give them some goals and actions to work towards for the user, but between A and B and how they get there is going to be fully open form. And so what that means is that, your players can really surprise you with some of the stuff that they come up with. And so that brings us to kind of what Inworld does um, to support what I just mentioned, right? Like bringing AI NPCs to life. So again, as I mentioned, they're a fully integrated platform for AI characters. So you could have your design team, your writing team, your creative team go in and create these characters with no code, right? And then you as a developer can deploy these characters using our SDKs to realistically whatever platform you want, right? Like we even have a Roblox, uh, workspace, which means somewhere out there there's like, lots of kids talking to generative AI, and that's really interesting and exciting because, like my generation was the digital native. This upcoming generation that's going to be AI native, I think, is going to be really amazing for the stuff that they can build. Configurable safety. So of course, as I talk about Roblox, you know that a lot of that target audience is quite young, and therefore safety is a really big area of focus for us at Inworld. We want to make sure that you as a developer are protected, and of course your players are protected as well. So there's the ability to kind of adjust sliders in terms of like how strict users should be like checked, and also if you're kind of creating a more conversational companionship kind of character, that you can relax some of those controls. But the option is there. Knowledge. So being able to kind of define what knowledge your characters should have. So we actually released a Skyrim mod um, where we populated the world like Whiterun with our characters. And of course, we took the lore from those characters in Skyrim and crafted an in-world persona for them, right? So you could talk to Lydia, the companion, and she'll have a dynamic response. You can talk to the guard at Skyrim and ask him how he got that arrow in the knee and stuff like that. memory. So coherence is something that is very exciting across um, this space, right? Like we're working on the ability to have long-term coherence so that characters can remember from a few sessions ago, what references to events that you were talking about or stuff that happens in the game. Narrative controls. So you're able to ensure that characters kind of follow along the thread of the narrative that you want. So even if users try to like throw them off, they'll respond to that input and then try to kind of guide you back. So if you kind of think of like escape rooms or those like live action clue games where the actors will interact with you and then try to get you back on track to solve the puzzle or solve the challenge. And multimodality. So what that means is being able to, ingest not just like the text input from the users, but also what's happening in the game, right? So like a Unity event or like an Unreal trigger, and then respond to that too. So you're able to, for example, when the user walks up to the microphone in your game, that's when the AI starts listening, right? So that's really important to us. And of course, when we return the response from our end, it's not just the output. It's going to be like an emotional state. So whether the AI is excited or happy, sad or upset at what you've said to them. And then also we're working on a relationships feature. So similar to any other RPG that you've engaged with in the past, being able to over, a period of time kind of get like a trusted relationship with this character or a friendship. And then that may unlock certain narrative controls that you on the developer end have implemented, which is really exciting if you really think about that for a second. Um, and so, what underlies the tech at Inworld? So, we have kind of three pillars that we think about, right? So, the first being this performance real time AI. So, of course, if you look at what ChatGPT does now, and you look at some of the other chatbot style interactions, latency is something that is can be really lacking sometimes. And so, what we've done is we've really put a lot of time and effort into reducing that to essentially real time, right? Like it's a conversation, and um, my hope is that I will stream the studio for you, and we can take a look at that so you can see it for yourselves. So essentially, the ability to select the right LLM for the job, right? So we're not going to be feeding everything to one LLM based on how complex the character is, how complex the inputs are. We pick the right LLM for the job, which really helps with that latency problem, right? Character engine. So right now, if you were to go to OpenAI and you can ask it for queries about coding and you can ask it about how to do this or like a recipe for pie, but it doesn't really feel like there's any personality in those responses, right? It's just almost like an encyclopedia, right? It's just answering your question. With Inworld's personality engine, you're able to kind of define like how your AI should react. We even give you the chance to do dialogue, so you can have like an empathetic character or a very aggressive character or like a character who's very laissez-faire, for example. And I'll show you all that in our studio. And we found that that really enables the experience to be more engaging and more dynamic. So the next thing that we have, kind of prided ourselves in is this contextual mesh. So being able to have the AI be aware of the other objects in the scene with it, the other characters in the same scene, right? So we have an Alice in Wonderland kind of workspace. And so Alice should know who the Mad Hatter is and have awareness of the Queen of Hearts. And so they're aware of these other characters and have these guardrails around them to ensure that you can't ask these fantasy characters about what happens in the real life or vice versa. So we found that a lot of times players will try to like break the character. And so we pride ourselves on being able to protect the characters and make sure that they stay in character for the experience. And so I want to, really emphasize that we at InWorld are very developer first focused. We want to work with game studios, and we are working with a lot of game studios, as you can see here at the bottom, and brands to really bring to life what is possible with generative AI in interactive experiences, right? So studios and devs and us. So I talked to a few about, I kind of, gave you a little bit of a hint about some of the stuff that we've been working on. And so we have a Skyrim mod that we released with Block that essentially adds our, kind of flavor into the world of Skyrim in Whiterun. We recently released a Stardew Valley mod actually, which is I believe based on a web SDK. So really cool. You're able to walk around Pelican Town and talk to villagers and have these really interesting in lore, in character experiences. So like you can ask the wizard about Krobus, or you can ask, Marnie about other characters in the town. And I think it's really cool that we're able to bring these new experiences and new ways of engaging to, already released games. And as I mentioned before, Origins, which is on Steam, is based on Unreal Engine 5, and it looks really, really good. And it's a real showcase of what's possible with generative AI in NPCs when we're building from the ground up. So I will see if I can stream Studio. Yes. Okay. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to stop sharing this tab, and I'm going to stream the Studio tab, this one. So that's our platform. When you click Get Started, you'll be presented with like a sign up page. And I really want to highlight that. Oh, I guess it opened a new tab. Interesting. Here, let's just copy that paste here. Let's do that. So we have, I know pricing is a thing. That's always a question. And of course, we have a free tier that's 200 minutes a month. And it basically allows you as developers to test and ensure that the integration makes sense for what you're working on, right? And then we have a pro tier that's $20 a month and provides 2,000 minutes of interaction. And then every minute after 2,000, it's 1.6 cents a minute, which I believe is cheaper than OpenAI. But we are switching to a per API call, which is a lot more transparent. And for people who are building like text only interactions, it makes a lot more sense to calculate. So this is kind of our platform and what you'll see when you first log in. There is like an example workspace, right? I believe this is the default one. And so these avatars might look familiar. They are from Ready Player Me, but we're just powering the tech underneath. So really, when you deploy your character to Unity, for example, you're able to replace the mesh, replace the model, whatever kind of character that you want it to be, and essentially you're able to piggyback on top of the animation tree that we already create for you, right? So I will go back to our DevRel example. And so I really want to showcase some of the ease of access for creating these characters, right? So you're able to create like nicknames for these characters. I've created DevRel Dina as a way to showcase some of the best stuff that happens at Inworld. And so you can even like set an age. And so here's your basic kind of like how to get started with Inworld. So these core descriptions are like your core memory. So if you watch that movie Inside Out, it's like these are like the really important memories that the character should know and care about. And so I've given her the description that, let me know if it's too small. I'll zoom in a little bit anyway. But essentially the foundation of the character, like what their kind of one paragraph or two paragraph backstory is. So I've had it here that she's always happy to help us and kind of talk to you about Enroll, and they're friendly and a knowledgeable companion, right? I haven't created any flaws for her, but of course, if you're creating this like narrative experiences or you're trying to get closer to reality, we as humans have our flaws, right? Like, and you're able to include that in these characters. And I just want to point out that each field has a relevant link to documentation, so you're able to understand a little bit more about how that works. Motivations, of course. She's motivated by her desire to help reflect, what Inworld is and be its kind of face, right? So maybe in the future she'll be giving this talk, and I'll just be, in the background clicking next. Dialogue style. So as I mentioned before, we really wanted to give you as creators the ability to customize how your characters come back to you, right? How they interact and how they engage. And so what's really, really cool is we've also provided the option to do custom dialogue styles. So you could do like a pirate, you could do like very technically oriented talk. And that is really interesting to me, right? Because then you're starting to give people the ability to create dialogue styles that aren't really common or are unique to the world that they're building. So I'll go back to empathetic for now. And that's kind of the basic stuff. If we dig deeper into the advanced stuff, this is where we really kind of start to shine in terms of that personality engine, like I mentioned before. So these traits you're able to put in, they're not like, I type these, it's not a set selection. Mood, so again, these are like sliders that you can change that reflect in the responses that the character has when you're talking to it, right? How dynamic should they be? How flexible are they to changing how they feel about you? This knowledge field is super important. This would be where you would fill in what your character wants to know or should know, right? So in Skyrim, this would be where we put in their like where they live, their profession, and stuff like that. And we are working on the ability to ingest other data types. So, for example, like a CSV or an XML or an API call to an external database. That's something that's been really requested and something that we're actively building. Common knowledge. So this would be where you would have knowledge about other characters that kind of like the world of Skyrim. So for example, each of the Skyrim characters would have their own personal knowledge about whether they're a blacksmith or a warrior or a guard. But in terms of like who's the mayor of Whiterun or like who are the different factions in Skyrim, that would fall under common knowledge that all of them should know. And so you only have to build that common knowledge repository once, and then you just link it to all the relevant characters. This is where it's really exciting. Of course, um, AI NPCs should have the ability to speak to you, right? And so we have our own kind of featured text-to-speech voices. But one thing I really want to share is that we've also integrated with 11 Labs, right? And their amazing voice custom training. And so with an API key from 11 Labs, you're able to hook in your own custom voices. And so we've seen that, especially with brands, they're really interested in making sure that their spokesperson or the kind of voice represents the brand. And so that's where 11 Labs really helps us, right? So I'll just click listen and see if you can hear.
Hello, I'm Deborah Eldina.
Did that come through, Excel?
Yeah, it came through just fine.
Nice. So you can kind of hear that she's got some personality and layer in her voice, and when we talk to her in the studio, which I will go through, you'll be able to see that. And goals and actions. So goals and actions are the ability to set these kinds of like things that the AI should want to get to. So for example, when she solves the user's problem, which is triggered by a goal ID, and this can go down to Unity as well or Unreal and be triggered by like Unity events, she'll say something like "You're most welcome," and the user-defined event is "Thank you." And she'll be affectionate as a response, right? And you can layer these. You can add more instructions. We're also working on a goals v2, where you're able to have the characters have intent detection. So like, if you're asking for a quest, you can say quest request, and it doesn't have to be verbatim. The AI will detect when a character asks like, what should I do next, or what's my task, or do you have anything for me to do, and it'll all slot into that goal of like give the user a quest. And the response can be dynamic too. You can have the character within like the range of things that you wanted to say these things, which is really exciting. And scenes are the ability to let them know like where they're residing and what's around them and what characters are nearby, stuff like that. So let's chat with her. Unmute this. And again, I want to really emphasize on latency here.
I'm doing great. Thank you for asking. How about you? How can I help you today?
And so I hope you can see that it's essentially.
Of course, I'd be happy to.
TTS time.
Inworld AI is designed to be the most advanced and user-friendly AI platform available. Our team has worked tirelessly to create an AI experience that is both intuitive and powerful. Our AI tools are designed to be easy to use, even for those without any programming experience. We have a wide range of AI features, including natural language processing, speech recognition, and computer vision.
So
Do you have any specific questions, or would you like me to show you some examples?
I hope that people watching realize what just happened there. It was super fast, that response that came back after he typed in that question. It was already streaming the response. It was already generating the voice, and it was just taking back that call from 11 Labs and then just saying those words as they were being written out. Right? That's brilliant.
And so what's really interesting is if you use our own built-in TTS, it's actually faster.
Mm-hmm.
11 Labs adds a little bit of latency, of course, because we have to query their servers. But if you're really just like aiming for the most immersive experience, the fact that everything was already there and it actually took her longer to like read it out, is really phenomenal. If you're thinking about that and if you're familiar with using AI tools, like that's pretty awesome.
No, that's great.
And something I want to call out is that comes from our team's expertise, right? Like the team at Inworld AI actually comes from Dialogflow, the company that was acquired, right, that worked with that DeepMind and Google worked with to create the Google Assistant. So the ML, the NLP, like the natural language processing expertise and the ability to like really dig deep into these models is there, and that's really kind of self-evident in how quick these characters can can pick up and respond to you. And so I also want to call out our documentation, just to make sure that we cover everything for developers if you're doing this hackathon. And so we have a developer kind of page. I'm working on something called Developer Hub, which will have easy access to everything, like how-tos and tutorials and things like that. So,
Okay.
bear with us.
Yeah, I was looking at the documentation earlier, and it's always that thing where you get lost looking at someone else's documentation.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%. And we're working on it. Like, we know that some of the SDKs could be better, right? Like, our Unity and Unreal one is pretty robust. And I'm actually really excited about our simple API. Like, it's very step by step. You're able to dive right in. And it's very similar to what we've seen with other platforms, and making sure that there's a way for users who may not be as technical as you or I to be able to kind of jump in and start making stuff, you know? We have our pricing page here, like I mentioned before. Well, this one is under construction, but our main page pricing, we'll talk about our trial and our pro. We have an FAQ page, and here are our advanced SDKs. So of course we have our Unity SDK, Unreal, Node.js, our Web SDK, our NDK. NDK is really exciting because it means that, other companies that have their own game engines don't have to rely on our other ones, as long as it's some sort of C++ integration somewhere, which, I can't really think of an engine that doesn't have a C++ integration. You're able to hook in Inworld. We have a RESTful API. We have that Roblox SDK, which I still think is so crazy. And we have a Minecraft SDK. I believe you can also even download our Stardew Valley one and get, kind of creative with that. But
So
I think it's
there's no reason you guys shouldn't use it, guys. No reason.
Yeah. And again, if you're like building stuff for AI Gen Jam and you're just excited to try it, just drop me a DM, drop me an email, Russell at Inworld.ai, and I'm happy to give you like a month of pro just to play around with it and mess around with it and kind of show us what cool stuff you're building, right? So that's really, really exciting. I will bring us back to the slides because I think there's a couple more left. I think we are here. So these are some of the experiences that have released with Inworld. So MOE was at Cannes Lions, and it was basically showing off the ability to have this AI companion walk you through the show. It was an AR experience, which is really exciting. We've worked with Niantic and Eighth Wall, the kind of web XR deployment platform, to create this owl called Wall, which is meant to teach you about the redwoods. So if you go to meetwall.com on your device, it's meant to showcase that you can target and build for like the Quest Pro, and it'll work on your phones, it'll work on other devices. And so Niantic and us partnered to showcase that kind of character interactions. And I just want to highlight again that we are where the developers are. And so if you see an integration that's like not there yet, let us know, and I'm very sure we'll be either having it in the pipeline or are working on it to release already. And so what you're working on, the engines that you're using, and I heard a lot of Godot stuff, so I think NDK works there, but we're looking at maybe a native Godot plugin. But what engines you're using already, we're not trying to force you to learn new stuff. We're able to like plug and play into them as packages. Just some testimonials from some happy users and some studios that have been working with us.
Could you get or show us that what was it, a game that you said that was already like picking up steam, and show us a little bit more about that?
I'll showcase maybe some clips of what's going on with Inworld.
That's real exciting.
Yeah, so it's really cool because we did not expect it at all, and actually kind of taxed our servers a lot. So I'll dig deeper into that a little bit. But so if you scan this QR code, it leads you to Origins. It's again not a paid thing; it's free. We're releasing it as a way to show developers what's possible when you design for a narrative experience from the ground up, right? So this demo is available now. We actually released with the Steam Next Fest, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago, and the plan is that we're going to do some updates to it, and we want to re-release it with 11 Labs voices, which I think will be really fun. And I will show this page, and then I'll take you guys to Vaultville, which is the game that's really kind of blowing up. So again, our Twitter. We also have a Discord. You can join us bit.ly/Inworld Discord, and feel free to hop in there. You can ping me, DevRel Russ, ask me questions, stuff like that. So some of the stuff that has been really taking off has been the Vaultville with Voice Critical, and so we did not expect this, and I'm gonna show the trailer.
Ooh, that's good. The power of voice. I don't know which one you're gonna click on, but
Yeah, let's do this, and then I'll go to Moist's page.
Remember, detective, I have a busy schedule and I am not here to entertain you. If there's anything else you need to know, ask quickly and make sure you do not waste any more
So
time.
the whole idea is that it's like a detective kind of noir, neo-noir, like you're trying to solve these murders. And so the streamers have been really kind of riding with it. And we've been working closely with the developer to ensure uptime and make sure that users have the best opportunity for it. But you're just like going through these experiences and you're just interacting with these different characters that are all in-world powered, either with
Any
voice or
questions
with
about the
text.
story, detective?
No, sir.
May I ask what brings you to my humble abode today, Detective Martini?
And so you really kind of like you try and solve the murder with
I was an extra.
the characters. So this character in this game is powered by us.
Ingrid, you old battle axe. Where is Dada at?
Haha, I'm not sure who Dada is, but I'm doing great. How about you? Anything new in your life?
Just 3 dead people. You know, the usual.
Oh my goodness, that's terrible. I've heard about the murders on the news. It's so scary. Have you been working on the case? Maybe I can help in some way.
Yeah, what do you think about Marina H?
I'm not sure. I don't know Marina personally, so I can't really comment on her character. But I'm willing to listen and offer support if you need to talk about anything related to the investigation.
Why are you barefoot?
Oh, I just love being barefoot. It feels so freeing and natural, you know?
Like it's hilarious.
That's
there's
great.
a lot of moments that are really funny, and like I think one of the characters like introduces themselves as like one of the streamers is like gives a whole spiel and then at the end ends it with like, you can call me Batman, right? And then the character is like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know you were Batman, and then like continues talking, and it's really engaging and really funny.
Wow.
And so it didn't feel like this character Ingrid was like parsing, you know what I mean? Like there wasn't that like vibe of like, oh, let me go fetch from the server what I should say next. It was like she immediately responded to the contextual information that she was barefoot from the user, and then like talked about it just like you would if you were trying to engage with like a voice actor or a real person. Yeah. I really think that the tech kind of speaks for itself, and so I'm really excited to kind of just share information about what it is and give you a chance to just integrate it wherever or whatever you're working on.
Yeah, and even we talk a lot about new games, but I definitely see the opportunity for a lot of developers that maybe they've been in the game for a while. Like imagine what's his name, the guy from Dwarf Fortress. Imagine that dude.
Yeah.
Throwing in yeah, honestly you should hit him up if you can, like see if he'd be interested, because his little dwarves talking to you and telling them about their story, like I could just imagine, oh my god, how else do I lose more time in my life?
The world building is just so amazing, like the potential to because they're already dynamically generating backstory and lore for each of these little dwarves, right? Like they're all like they lost their arm in like a mining accident, or like they were fighting a goblin. And being able to like ask a dwarf and be like, hey, what happened to your leg? And he gives you like a dynamically generated response, I think based on his already existing backstory, I think it's really exciting.
For sure. Well, we don't really have any questions so far, but I did have one. are people finding it a little bit hard to control? You mentioned that there are a lot of things that people have been trying to to break your AI, like to get them to say
Mhm.
things that maybe they shouldn't say,
Mhm.
or maybe reveal some details that they shouldn't be revealing in the first place.
Right.
What is your experience with that? Like, have you found that it's harder for people to control?
Yeah, so it's very, this is really relevant of a question, especially if you're building a project for like a big brand, right? Like you want to make sure that the companies that are paying you for this project and you as a developer have your reputation on the line, that you're not exposed to this kind of like significant liability, right? And so that's something that we've really, really locked in and doubled down on, making sure that characters are not, I know it's not 100% perfect, but we're always improving, and that's why our main focus is English for now. The characters actually do respond in other languages, but the problem is that we don't want to promise support in those languages because it's hard to make sure that there's certain like nuances of languages that might be very NSFW for that language but not relevant to the AI to know about. So we're focusing on English for now and making sure that within the realm of the language we're really protecting our characters. It's funny because like you think about protecting the users, but it's really protecting the characters from the users. And so when you have that lens on, it makes it a little bit easier to ensure that we do a lot of pre-processing, post-processing of the input, a lot of filtering, and again, like I mentioned, safety configurations to make sure that if you like, for example, Niantic trusted us to build this owl character that's really primarily targeted for like children to learn about the forest, and so I think our track record speaks for itself, and it's something that we're very much focused on, especially with the whole kind of lens on like user interaction and like user kind of safety, right?
Yeah, that's great. Uh, did you have anything else? Were you going to get into a technical demo, or were you going to basically
Yeah, let me see if I
stop it
can
here and
pull
see
up
what we can do?
Unity in time here.
Oh, okay. Well, while you're doing that, I did have another question about I was really impressed actually with the interface of the site. Because when you say no code, right, that kind of got me a little bit worried. I like code. So, but then again, looking at all those settings and all that tuning that you had to do, just imagining the amount of code that I'd have to write to have something like that set up on my end, like, oh man, what a headache. So that's top notch, grade A. Like that's amazing that you guys have that available for everybody. Um,
Yeah, and I want to like, it's very important that we make these character creation process accessible, because sometimes like it might not be you and I building these characters out. It'll probably be like a narrative designer, and so not having to like sit there next to them to like program this out for them saves you time to integrate. And I just also want to highlight that like our technical documentation is like technical. Like you can do function calls, you can do event triggers, you can make sure that like the AI responses are giving you exactly what you need for like animation events and stuff to happen. So it's not like we aren't technical. It's just the character creation process we really drilled in on making it accessible.
yeah, no, and it's definitely a good starting point for especially designers. I would think that they would just turn around, go to your site, try to design something, some character with some specific traits or personality, and some world knowledge of maybe what they know or what they should know. Actually, that is a good point. You had a section there for common knowledge and specific knowledge. Do you have a section, or are you thinking about a section for stuff that they really shouldn't know? Like, oh, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you. I'm wondering if it's my headphones or hold on. It could be.
No, no, it's me. I
It's you?
actually had
Okay.
myself muted so that I would interrupt you when I was opening Unity. I was saying that what we've discovered is that that core knowledge, or that knowledge field, can also be used to define limits. So you could say that like character only knows about the world of cyberpunk and doesn't understand references to modern day history, right? Or doesn't understand like they have the knowledge base of like feudal Japan and they have no idea about like Rome or other countries and stuff like that. So even within that knowledge pool, you can tell them what they shouldn't know about,
That's
which
perfect.
is a great point.
Yeah.
So I'm just hopping into our kind of Unity demo scene here. And so when you download our SDK, you'll get this ability to hop between these different scenes, right? So I'll showcase. We have this like studio panel here, and that's a pop up when you install this thing. I recommend installing it through the package manager, right? I'm sure you're familiar with that. We have a like a tar or package from this that you can download from our documentation. We are on the asset store. It's just that sometimes our most updated SDK will be reflected on our documentation first, and then we push it to Unity, and they have to do their whole, certification verification process. So if you're looking for the most updated feature set, definitely check out the documentation page. When you sign in, you're able to. So by default, you have these two workspaces. You can check out Olympus or Celeste, and then you're able to log in with your Inworld account and pull. That's how you pull your characters from the web-based platform into Unity. And so we give you the couple of quick options, like you're able to add a player controller. And the reason why that is important is because if you look on our custom player controller here, we have like a camera controller for specifically for Inworld to detect, like the characters should know when they're being looked at, right? You can imagine.
Yeah.
Um, because you don't want your characters to like always be listening, because if you're all the way over in the other side of the world, like they shouldn't be listening to what your character should be saying. And we have this player script, and so this player script has a reference to like the canvas and give you an idea of like what should pop up in front of the player. And I'll hop into the game in a second. It has references to like the different text bubbles, and again, this is all configurable. Like if we look at the script, it'll pop up in your IDE and you can take a deeper look at it. But essentially, we give you all these references that you should have references to, a record button that you can define yourself, right? So you could have it like be whatever you want. And we give you these different chat scripts. So we hop into what the example looks like. I think Celeste is like a character that we created to just showcase, I think she's like a archaeologist, like a spatial archaeologist that's like really upset that she's in space. She's really funny. And so you have these different scenes. You're able to walk around. I think on this Mac, I haven't enabled some of the like warning checks, but that's in our documentation too. I can show you some of our other scenes around here. And we like I said, we've provided these runtime scripts to ensure that you have full control over like where the data comes out of, and controls that the character should have, stuff like that. So if you look at some of these other scenes, we have a multiple character scene, for example, so you can see what it looks like to walk between like Hermes and Zeus and talk to them. So again, these are just like gRPC warnings that I have to have on this Mac, accepted. But if you're on a Windows computer, it'll just work out of the box.
Yeah, I constantly have to shuffle my keyboard shortcuts in my brain, switching between
Yeah,
Mac and
exactly.
Windows. It's so
I know,
yeah.
I know, dude. Um, So yeah, again, we provide these like basic prefabs for you to be able to hook in. So for example, when I started, when I applied to work at Inworld, what I did was I used this Unity SDK to build like a Mario Kart-esque game, except that the other racers were Inworld characters. So like you would like overtake them and they would like yell at you, or you would hit like a time checkpoint first, and then they would like congratulate you, or like they would react to stuff that happened in game. And that was all just hooked up using like Unity events, right? And just querying the SDK to be like, user throws a banana at you and you spin out of control, and then they have like a bark, like a response to it, right? But again, dynamically generated, not scripted, which is really, really cool. So yeah, I would really recommend jumping in. You can even tie events to like when the character stops speaking, when they finish speaking. So you could have like one of our interns is actually working on like kind of like a Stanley Parable style experience, where
Ooh.
walking into different rooms triggers different voice lines that are dynamic. And when the character finishes, like the lights flash, or like when they start talking, stuff moves around the room. And so I really encourage you, taking a deeper look at the characters and this demo. I can maybe pop into our animation controller. Let's take a look. Oh, that's a big gesture layer.
Yeah.
And let me see if I can make that big enough. There it is. So we have kind of pre-built this out for you. And so based on what the response is from our end, we'll have these, baked in animations play. And again, you can customize this, right? Like it's not a black box. Like these are just basic animation controllers that we've set up for you. So based on what's going on, the character will react and animate in different ways. We have also like a face layer, which I think right now is just neutral, and just your like kind of idle layers. And then once you hop into talking, it hops into gestures. So we've really put a lot of emphasis on giving developers the tools that they need to just get started really fast and get going right away. Right, like a really simple sample scene, a couple of different characters, how it works with multiple characters, and I believe we also have the goals and actions one, where you essentially have this cube that you have to like say the magic word to, and he transforms into a person. And I think we have a setup here, what that looks like, right? Like have a transform to what happens when the goal completes, which is, I think you have to say like Alakazam or something, and then on the goal completed, which comes back from our end, we have this transform canvas change. So I believe it like pops up like you did it, congratulations. And so everything that we've kind of shown in our documentation, we tried to give you an example for, at least.
Gotcha. And to me, this is pretty simple and pretty clear cut. I mean, the hardest thing about this is really just understanding HTTP requests, right? And if you're coming from a web dev world, you've got it in the bag. I mean, that's all AI is right now. You just do HTTP requests, you wrap them up, and you get those responses. But
Exactly.
what's really interesting that Inworld is doing is that it's making it even easier to do that for everybody, and then get those responses in real time. So it's amazing.
Yeah, awesome. Well, that's all I got for today, but I'm happy to chat for a little bit, actually.
Yeah, no, honestly, there's not enough people that for me to justify you sticking around. We had maybe like 7 or 10 at one point, but dwindled
Yeah,
out.
I mean,
But
hey,
it's cool. Hey,
people are busy jamming, right?
yeah,
So I'm happy
I
that.
think people need to jam, or
Yeah,
people need
absolutely.
to
And
get work done.
you can always share this recording with them
I'll
asynchronously, and that's
send me those links that you want to send. Obviously, Inworld is one of them. Maybe your LinkedIn. I'll drop the link in the description. Make sure that if anyone wants to look for you, they can find you. Basically.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thank you, Axel. It was
No,
nice
thanks so
chatting with
much,
you.
man. Yeah. Bye.
Bye now.
All right, guys. Hopefully that was fun. Hopefully that was interesting. I know I had a lot of fun. Like I said, I will definitely drop those links in the description on YouTube. So go ahead and check that out. Check Inworld out. Check Russell out. He's a great guy. And happy to help out whenever he's given a chance. So thanks again for enjoying and watching the stream, and I'll catch you guys later.